Welcome to the Data Platform Architecture Week. Having understood the RDBMS and NoSQL data concepts, now we are ready to understand at a high level the different layers that make up the data platform architecture. So that's what we are going to take a look at in this video. And further, we are going to take a look at the different data repositories. We got introduced to them in week 1, but this week we are going to take a deeper look at the difference between a data warehouse versus a data mart and a data lake. Through this process, we are also going to bring out the difference between an OLTP, a transaction processing database, versus an OLAP, an analytical processing database. Through the data platform, data pipelines play a very critical role. So we are also going to talk in this video about data platform and their difference with respect to ELT process and ETL process. So let's get started. We'll start off by looking at the different layers of the data platform architecture. So the block diagram on the right gives you an idea of the different components. So let's see the different layers physically. So we have the data ingestion or the data collection layer, and then you have a data storage layer, a data processing layer, and then finally where the data needs to be served to other data consumers. So there is an analysis and user interface layer, and there is a common layer that runs across the data ingestion, data processing and the user interface. That's the data pipeline layer. So now let's take a look at each of them, each of these layers in detail. So the data ingestion or data collection, as the name suggests, right, it is the layer which is transferring data from different data sources, typically operational data sources, your ERP systems, your sales system, your marketing systems, etc. So there can be different types of data. So most enterprise data are relational. So they are batch data, right? You can typically transfer data into your data platform on a daily basis or a weekly basis. But sometimes you also need to look at streaming data. So streaming data typically would be any real-time data that comes in probably from a social media in terms of streams of Twitter, tweets, etc. Or it could also be data that's coming from different set of sensors in an IoT kind of application. Then it's also important for, while you are data ingesting, it's important to maintain the metadata about the data. So where is the data coming from? What is the context of the data, right? And from which data source it is coming from? And also what is the time at which the data has been brought together. So as we take a deeper look at each of it, we'll see what is the significance of maintaining this metadata. So once the data ingestion brings data from different sources, then you have to store this data, right? So that is where the data storage component comes in. So you need to store data for any sort of long-term use and make it available for further data processing. So you will see these are generic high-level layers, and how it's implemented would depend on platform to platform. So we'll see some examples, so it will make sense as we go along. Alright, so the data storage layer is very important because this is where sometimes your raw data is stored and then your transform data is also stored. So now let's look at the data processing layer, right? So as you can see on the right side, you have data ingestion of both your streaming and batch data, whatever is required in an organization. And then you have a data, we talked about the data storage layer and the metadata repository, right? So the data about the data, that's your metadata that gets stored as well in a data storage. So then you have the data processing layer. So the data processing is where you apply a lot of data validation, transformation and business logic, right? So one very important part of a data processing layer is data validation to check the quality of the data, right? And then the whole idea of your data platform is to ensure that you are able to do a lot of different types of reporting. So you also need to transform data, join multiple tables in order to bring the data relevant to the business process and also apply any sort of business logic. So the transformations typically contain data cleaning, because we have to look at how the operational data is storing its information, and any sort of structuring and cleaning of the data is required, especially if there is any sort of missing values, what do they actually mean in the real context, etc. And then you also tend to do some normalization and denormalization. So here when we talk about normalization, we are more talking about standardization of data across the different operational platform. So sometimes, as you can see, operational platform databases also get evolved over time. So different categories of a particular product, etc., may be referred by different acronyms in different operational database. So there is need for standardization and structuring of the data. And then we also bring in the denormalized data, right, which is bring about the joining of these multiple operational tables in order to understand different insights about the business processes itself. So typically, data storage and data processing, when we talk about the data platform at a high level, it's mentioned as two separate blocks, but sometimes they can be in the same layer, right? Because you have data stored and processing is done and stored, right? Or sometimes data processing can precede data storage. So while your data is getting ingested itself, the data processing can be done and directly stored in a data storage. So this is to give you a high level understanding of the different components that go into a data platform. Then you have your analysis and user interface layer. So the whole idea of this layer is it has to deliver. So now that you have brought together all the data as a centralized repository, and you have transformed the data to derive insights, this makes a lot of sense only if the consumers are able to consume this data, right? So the key aspect of this layer is to deliver the processed data to the data consumers. So who are the typical data consumers? So they could be business stakeholders, right? So somebody who's managing operations, who want to take some sort of day-to-day decision based on the data. So how was yesterday or this week's sales, so that they can make some day-to-day decision. So further down, you're also going to have the analyst and data scientists who are going to explore and understand the advanced analytics of it, right? Is there a possibility of predicting sales, do some machine learning, etc. on it? Or your user interface layer can also be feeding this process data into other application and services, right? So which could be a typical dashboard, for example, or it could be a software on your client side, so that this data is the reports are auto-generated and sent to them, right? So these are the different ways in which the data that's being processed in your data platform can be served to the different data consumers. So this layer typically has to support one or more of the following actions. So there should be an ability to query your process data, right? Because if it is meant for data analysts and data scientists, they want to look at the data and query it for themselves. So typically, if you are looking at serving it to other applications and services, so application processing interface, APIs, can be run to generate your reports for both online and offline processing. So you can have dashboards which are real time, or you can have offline processing where reports are generated probably once a week, or whatever is the context of the business process, right? So there could also be APIs that can consume data from the storage for other applications. So there could be other software applications which consume this processed data, right? So typically it could be a visualization software, but it could also be yet another application which is understanding the process data, right, and doing more advanced analytics on it. So yeah, so it should have some dashboarding capability and extracting business intelligence. So finally, we look at the data pipeline layer. So if you look at the block diagram, the data pipeline overlays all the layers in the data platform architecture, right? So they are part of the data ingestion process, data storage, the data processing, and the user interface and analysis layer as well. So they have the capability to extract, transform, and load. So we'll talk more about the different ways in which this processing can happen, right? So this is to give you the high level understanding. Later we'll take a deeper look at how a data warehouse architecture typically looks like, right? So that's why it's important to understand, hey, there is a data pipeline which underlays all of it, right? Because data is sort of moving after it's being collected. So first there is a data pipeline that needs to bring data, and then data pipeline that needs to process the data from storage to processing it and storing the processed data, and then there is also data pipeline in order to serve it to the user interface and analysis layer. So it should have all of these capability of going through the different layers. So this data pipeline layer is a generic term. So this layer is responsible for implementation and maintaining continuous flow of data through the data platform. Alright, so now we will, now that we have understood the different layers of a data platform architecture at a high level, so let's look at what are typical data platforms that are available, right? So the first thing is, it's important to understand data platform sometimes is also referred to as data repository or data store, right? So in order to clarify these terminology, it's important to understand. So a data repository or a data store is a generic term used to refer to central repository where data is stored, collected, and isolated, right? So typically, whenever we talk about a data platform, we are talking about a data repository that is mainly developed for reporting and dashboarding for use in a business operation, right? So some business stakeholders can take a look at the data, get day-to-day reports or weekly reports. For the data analysts and the data scientists to do exploratory data analysis, right? So to look at the quality of the data, maybe there is a data pipeline which is not necessarily accumulating data in the right format, right? So that those things can be fixed, and then do any advanced analytics like machine learning on it. And then finally, also to do self-serve analytics. So self-serve analytics is basically a service where you can have business holders ask their own questions, because sometimes reporting is rigid, right? It's rigid in terms of the kind of questions or the kind of reports that get generated, whereas now there is an increasing need for self-serve analytics. So if you have your process data available, then you can sort of the business stakeholders can query it and find it in their own way. So the querying can happen in a visual format using any visualization software like Tableau or Power BI, or it could be using other tools as well. So so there are different flavors of the data repository, right? So a data repository can be a database by itself, or it can be a big data store, right? So a database is typically, we have seen what are the different flavors, your relational database and your not relational database. A big data store is typically for large volume of data, or it could be a data warehouse, it could be a data mart, or a data lake. So what are the considerations for designing a data store? So how do you design a data store? It has to do with, because it's a data store, you need to know what is the type of data, right? First, what are the kind of data you're bringing together into the central repository, and what is the volume of data? So some of the enterprise might be dealing with data at a smaller volume, but they still need to find analytics across the different functional units, right? So the volume could be low. So depending on that, you can have a database itself as a data repository. We'll see some of the examples in the next slide. And what is the intended use for the data? So is it just for reporting, or is there, so most times whenever you're starting off on the data platform exercise, it's important to set clear requirements in terms of, hey, what's the first advantage? Are we developing as a reporting tool, or is it meant specifically for advanced analytics, etc.? And what are the storage considerations, right? What is essentially your volume of data, and what's the security that's required for storing, and what are some of the privacy, security, and governance needs, especially in terms of your personally identifiable data, what all needs to be taken care of. So now let's dig deeper into the different flavors of the data repository, right? So that we can understand how the term data repository essentially can mean different technology in which it can be implemented. So looking at database and big data store, right? So they can be a central repository as well. So we have already seen databases in detail in the previous weeks. So there are two types of databases. So you have your relational RDBMS systems, or you have your NoSQL databases. So typically of 4 different types: your key value store, your columnar database, your graph database, and your document database. So each of them can be also implemented to be the data repository, right? So then you have your big data store. So big data store varies from your typical relational database, because it is used to store large amount of not only structured data but also semi-structured and unstructured data, and it is usually distributed. So that is why big data store usually come in 2 flavors. One is you can use a NoSQL database as a big data store, because they are usually scalable, right? And they are also distributed. So they can typically be, so you can use your columnar database or your document DB as your big data store, because they can store structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. Another very important big data store, which was very, very popular, was the Hadoop distributed file system. It is referred by HDFS, Hadoop distributed file system, right? So it is still in use, because it can store a large volume of data, but it has been abstracted at different levels, because working with Hadoop itself takes a lot of effort, right? So it has been abstracted so that it is easier to work with the Hadoop system. So a typical big data platform using Hadoop essentially would have Apache Hadoop as the distributed storage, right? And then on top there will be Apache Hive, which is the data warehouse for your data query and analysis, and then the Apache Spark, which looks at the general purpose data processing engine for complex and real-time analytics. So we'll see before sort of the advent of cloud, the big data platform was very popular, but then with the advent of cloud, you see that you have cloud-based data warehouse system, which can also do comparable performance to your specific big data platforms as well. So now let's look at another flavor of your data repository, which is your data warehouse. A data warehouse is a central repository for data integrated from multiple sources. So it is usually said to be a single source of truth, storing current data and historical data that has been cleaned, confirmed in terms of it's been standardized across all of the operational systems, right? And categorized in the way that the business process needs, any sort of transformation that needs to be done, etc. And data stored is modeled and structured for specific purpose. So the specific purpose here could be reporting, could be for advanced analytics, etc. Right? So traditionally, data warehouse were on-prem systems, but today they are all sort of moving to cloud because of the general advantages that cloud offers. Right? First is lower setup cost, in terms of you don't have to manage the data infrastructure itself, and scale as pay as you go basis. So depending on the data that you bring in into the system, you just pay as you go, and then you can get to limitless storage and compute capabilities. So I remember back in the day, if you have to scale your infrastructure, you have to set up your own server, right? It takes you have to do a tender and go through this whole process, which is what gets sort of eliminated by moving on to the cloud. And of course, cloud also offers a lot of extra advantages of faster disaster recovery, etc. So some examples of cloud data warehouse systems are your Google BigQuery, Amazon Redshift, Teradata, Snowflake, etc. So we'll do some deeper labs on the Google BigQuery because it's one of the popular data warehouse systems. When we talk about data store or data repository, there are two terms that often come into play: OLTP versus OLAP. So both refer to data repositories or data stores and online processing data stores, which means where data is updated, current, it's kept current, right? OLTP expands into online transaction processing system. So typically they are data stores that are optimized to capture and maintain transactional data, like your banking transaction, your airline reservation transaction, etc. The emphasis on fast processing, and data is written, read and updated frequently, right? So they typically back up all of the operational softwares that you have, right? Your online reservation system for your etc. So you are trying to read what is your schedule and then make reservations. So data needs to be written fast as well. Whereas the OLAP stands for online analytical processing data stores. Say these are data stores that is optimized for complex queries to large amount of data, so that aggregated data can be used for business intelligence or data analytics, right? So here you can start seeing that OLAP is what your data warehouse systems, your data platform lies in the OLAP region, right? Because there you are not writing data as often, you are not maintaining transaction data, but you are trying to bring transactional data from multiple data sources to get the single source of truth. So the emphasis is on the response time of complex queries based on the business process, so that you want to understand the business process from different perspective. So data from one or more OLTP databases are ingested into the OLAP system through the extract, transform and load process, ELT system. So this is also another way to understand your data pipeline, right? From your transactional system, we are sort of bringing data to the analytical system. So later we'll see why in your OLTP your database is referred in cylindrical ways, right? Where you have update, delete and insert. Whereas your OLAP is referred in as a cube, right? So this is typically a data cube. All right. So we'll talk about that as we go along. Having understood the different data repository flavors, we have looked at data warehouse system, which is the central repository, right? So now we are ready to look at data marts. So data marts are a subsection of the data warehouse built for specific business function or a community of user or purpose, very specific. All right. So there are different types of data marts. So here if you look at the figure on the right, you will see your data store, which is your operational database. So it's staged and put into data storage, which essentially looks at the user interface. That's your data and information delivery, right? So from your data staging, you can essentially create those data marts for very specific business applications. So that could be a data mart for operation needs, data mart for marketing needs, data mart for financial needs, etc. So there are different types of data mart. So one is the dependent data mart. So which is a subset of your data warehouse itself, right? So your data warehouse pulls up all of the data, and from that you are taking a subset of your data mart. Whereas you can also have independent data marts, which is created from sources outside the data warehouse plus your external systems. Right? So typically data from your data warehouse is used, and some external systems also which don't store data in your data warehouse is also used. So those are your independent data marts. And then you have a hybrid set of data marts which combine data from data warehouse, some data from the operational system which the data warehouse didn't necessarily need, or other external system. So typically your multiple data marts can be created from a single data warehouse, which is typically called the hub and spokes model. So this is essentially your dependent data mart, right? So you have your data warehouse. So this is your data warehouse, and then that is feeding into your different specific data marts. You can also have your independent, where your data marts are coming from your data warehouse plus your external systems, and then a hybrid where, so that is essentially what in this diagram is referred to as federated. Sometimes you also have a data mart bus, right? So from your staging, you are sort of putting data into the different data marts itself. So now let's look into the sort of the next data repository which got popularity with growing data formats, right? There were different types of data formats, and there was a need for something outside the data warehouse system. So that's why the data lake got into existence. So data lake is a data store that stores large amount of not only structured data but semi-structured and unstructured data in their native format. Okay, so data can be loaded without specifying the structure of the schema of the data. So that was becoming very important, right? Especially when you're combining data of different format. So some IoT data, maybe some image data. So if you want to, so think of a typical application where you have some sensor information, you also have somebody on the field taking pictures, etc. Right? So all of these data has to come together. So in a data warehouse, it's very difficult to put all of these data in a structured manner. So there was a need for a storage which would essentially be where you will be able to dump all of this data from different applications, right? And then start extracting anything out of it. So you don't have to specify any schema for the data. So it is essentially a repository for raw data from the sources to be transformed based on a use case. So that was another advantage of a data lake, is for a data lake, you didn't have to create a specific use case to start off with. Whereas in a data warehouse application, the requirement was specific to reporting or dashboarding, right? So the requirement, the use case was very clear. Whereas when you didn't have a use case, but you had a lot of data which could potentially be monetized later on, right? Then a data lake system is a typical data repository we want to look at. So a data lake is essentially a reference technology that can combine multiple technology. So what does that mean? They can be typically deployed. A data lake in an organization could be essentially just a cloud object storage system, which is your Amazon S3 or your Azure Blob can just be used as a data lake. Or they could be a big data store like your Apache Hadoop, which is your distributed file systems, right? So a data lake can also be created using a combination of relational and NoSQL databases, because you want to have both structured and unstructured. So how it's being deployed will depend on organization to organization. So finally, we look at the last layer, the data pipeline, right, which overlays all of the other layers. So pipelines are used to move data from source to destination in a data platform. So there are three types of pipelines. So essentially, you have a generic term of data pipeline. Then you have an ETL pipeline standing for extract, transform, load, or a ELT pipeline, extract, load and transform. So the data pipeline is just a generic term, refers for moving data from source to destination. So that is why you see data pipeline is from data ingestion to processing, from processing to user interface, everything is a data pipeline, right? So data pipeline also helps you. So in a typical data warehouse, there are three sort of types of data that gets stored, right? So one is, as you can see, there is some sort of a staging area where raw data is just collected from the operational system. Then data needs to be summarized to store in some of the complex tables to bring out the insights, right? And the metadata also needs to be stored, data about the data, right? So for all of these storage, it's important to have data pipelines, right? So data pipeline to bring in the raw data, from raw data processed and put into summarized data tables, and also collect these metadata, right? So the data pipeline is essentially a generic term. So further, if you look into data pipelines, one type of data pipelines is your ETL pipeline, right? So that stands for your extract, transform and load. So when you extract, as we have seen, it is ingest data, there is data ingestion, right? So data collection happens either as batches, so large chunks of data coming from an operational database at a regular interval, or your data is pulled from a particular source. Could be your Twitter data, could be your sensor, IoT data, etc. And then you are transforming it. So we talked a lot about data processing, right? So it could be standardizing of your data formats, removing duplicate data, especially when you're bringing together data from multiple sources, right? So there is a higher chance for duplicate data to be formed. Then cleaning of your missing values. Sometimes there is a process called imputation, right? So does it make sense to replace a particular missing value with another value, right? So that also tends to take place in the transformation, filtering out dates that are not required for our analysis. So some sort of enrichment, maybe in your operational data, an address is just stored as an address, right? Whereas when you want to look at different reports, you want to look at city and state level information. So you want to split your data into different information so that you can essentially make sense and create better reports for it, and applying any sort of business rule and data validation. And then finally, the data is loaded into the data repository. So when we talk about ETL pipeline, right, it is not that data is only one time loaded into a data warehouse. So remember, it's an online processing data store, right? So there is initial loading of your data into your data store, and then there is incremental loading. So every time your operational data gets new data, those needs to be also loaded. So there is incremental loading, and then very occasionally there is a full refresh of your data repository happening if there is any schema change of your data warehouse. And then your ETL process also has to not only do ETL, but it also have to ensure that the loading happened correctly, right? So the load verification check is also a very important part of the ETL pipeline. The next is just a rearrangement of the term ETL into ELT, which stands for extract, load into your data repository and transform. So transform and do what? Transform and load into another data repository, right? So typically ELT is a process that we use for data lakes. So data is extracted from multiple sources and loaded into a data lake, because you're processing large amount of structured, unstructured and non-relational data, right? And then the transformation happens, because you don't have specific requirements upfront to do the transformation itself. So you're just bringing data together into a data lake without any schema requirements, and then you are sort of transforming it, right? So one of the greatest, some of the advantages of your ELT process is you are storing data in its raw form. So greater flexibility for your data analyst or your data scientist for doing exploratory data analysis, because they also have the raw data, right? Because sometimes in order to create a data warehouse, you have to have specific requirements, whereas sometimes your data analysts want to know, hey, what are all the other kind of data you're collecting, right? So that they can think of other ways in which data can be used for decision making. So it helps to ingest large volume of raw data as soon as possible. So you don't have to think through the use case. So you first bring in the raw data, dump it into a data lake, and then data can be transformed later. So transform only data that is required for a particular analysis, right? So you are not necessarily bound by strict requirements, as I said. And it's leveraged for multiple use cases. So that is typically the advantage of your data lakes combined with your ELT pipeline. So let's summarize the learnings from this module, right? We have taken a look at the different layers of a typical data platform architecture, the 5 different layers, right? The data ingestion, data storage, data processing, user interface and analysis layer, and the data pipeline layer that goes all through, overlays all of the different layers. Then we looked at the different flavors of the data platform that can be created, right? So you have your data warehouse, or you can have a subset of your data warehouse, your data mart, or your data lake, especially when you have a lot of unstructured data. So now you can start seeing the sort of difference between your transaction processing, the need for your transaction processing versus analytical processing, right? So that's where the term of OLTP and OLAP becomes very relevant, because of the need of the data platform, data stores for data platform, right? And then we finally ended the discussion by taking a deeper look at the data pipeline. So your ETL process, extract, transform and load, for your data warehousing needs, and your ELT process, extract, load and then transform, for the data lake kind of architecture. Alright, so I will see you in the next video.